Time for ABC 10 Coffee Break with Frank and Friends.
Thank you for joining us for our Friday edition of Coffee Break. And I've got to tell you, this is probably one of the most unique coffee break sessions we have ever had. It's different from what we usually talk about, but I know you're going to find it fascinating, especially if you're a longtime Rhode Islander. And as always, feel free to send us your comments back here on Facebook about everything we are going to talk about. It says there, Frank and Friends. Here are today's friends. As soon as I turn the microphone on, you can hear me better, although I know you can hear me some. But starting from the end of the table, we've got Joseph Broadmeadow, retired from the East Providence Police Department, now a very successful author. A lot of you recognize Jerry Tillinghast, I'm sure, and we'll outline his storied career. And sitting on the other side of me is Paul DeMeo, longtime defense lawyer, another very familiar face in the Rhode Island court system. And today we're going to talk with one of the most infamous and most feared mob figures from back in the day when the mafia in Rhode Island was much more powerful than it is now. Jerry Tillinghast was once an associate of Raymond L.S. Patriarca until he was sent to prison in the late 70s, but continued to make news as a mob member every so often since then, right up until his release from prison about 2 years ago. And now, along with retired East Providence Captain Joseph Broadmeadow, has written a book about those years called Choices. You make them, you own them. Later, of course, we'll talk with Zach Green about the weather forecast for the weekend coming up. And thanks for seating one of the chairs at this table today,
absolutely.
Zach.
Anytime.
There's a lot of moving parts to this interview. We also have Paul DeMeo with us, longtime defense lawyer, and Jerry's a lawyer. So we'll try to put this all together. Choices. The Jerry Tillinghast story, you make them, you own them. One of the main points, Jerry, I think you want to make in this book is to dispel the glamour of the mob that we see in all kinds of movies.
There's no glamour. It's a fantasy, to say the least. Well, you know, after so much time behind the walls, you come to a firm decision that Hollywood and Disney World are in other states, not Rhode Island. So it's a tough road to go, and it's a tough road to really try to put your finger on the pulse of it at the same time.
And we're going to try to do that here, and I
Yeah.
know you do that in the book.
Yeah.
As I said, many moving parts of this. Paul DeMeo, Jerry's defense lawyer for many years, somehow got Joseph Broadmeadow and Jerry together. Now, this is not the first book for you, Joe. You've written, but this is your first nonfiction book.
It is a first nonfiction. I've written a number of novels, but and I was fortunate enough that Paul's wife had read one of my novels, and then Paul approached me about writing the book. And after I spoke with Jerry and we had a little opportunity to discuss things, it looked like a really great opportunity, and I think it's turned out.
And how did you bring them together, Paul?
Well, as you said, my wife Priscilla is my law partner, knew Joe, and also told me he was an author. We were looking, Glenn Laxton passed away. He was originally doing it. During the course of that, we needed an in-state author. I couldn't find anybody. So Priscilla gave me his book. I read it. I thought it was excellent. And I thought, what better author than an ex-respected police officer to write about an alleged criminal, I say alleged criminal, my friend Jerry.
Here's a quick summary of your life, if you don't mind, Jerry,
No.
and then we'll get into the meat of this. After you served in the Vietnam War, you joined in with the wise guys in Providence. You were found not guilty of involvement in the bonded vault trial in Providence in '75, but were sent to prison in '78 for the murder of mob loan shark George Basmajian. You were stabbed in the neck 3 times in 1985 in the maximum security print shop at the ACI, given work release privileges in '89, but you lost them when you were caught hanging with criminals. That, of course, was violating the terms of your time away from the ACI. Transferred to a state prison in New Hampshire and was soon arrested there for running a sports betting operation from prison. And that's where Jim Tarracani picked up the story in 1994.
Jerry Tillinghast, now serving a life sentence in New Hampshire for the 1979 gangland slaying of a local mobster, was the alleged manager of the gambling ring. Tillinghast was a leg breaker for the late mob boss Raymond Patriarca and was one of the most feared mobsters in Providence. His brother, Harry, recently was paroled for his part in the '79 murder, and a third brother, John, was one of the alleged pushers for the drug and illegal gambling ring busted by state police yesterday. And the alleged gambling and drug ring was bringing in some big bucks to the mob.
In the month of November alone, over $500,000 in illegal wagers were placed through this network. That's quite a bit of money over the course of a year.
Rip in, heaves.
Much of the money being bet with mob bookies now is on professional and college football games. Law enforcement sources say the Tillinghasts and their alleged co-ringleaders had to be paying the local reputed mafia boss in order to run their racket. And that boss, these law enforcement sources say, is Louis Babyshanks Bonacchio of Providence. So the reputed mobsters who allegedly ran this mob-backed drug ring are now behind bars. But law enforcement officials wonder if drug rings like these can never be completely wiped out, since this one was being run from a jail cell in an out-of-state prison. In Cranston, I'm Jim Terracani, News Channel 10.
All right, before we do anything else, anything you disagree with in that story?
Oh, a few things.
Okay, go ahead.
But to recap it, in other words, I was in 1994, I put in for an early parole review. And I forgot the exact month, but anyway, so they come and told me to pack up, I'm going back to Rhode Island. In my mind, I thought it was an early parole review. Never did I think of anything like this. So when I got back, that's when I found out that I was, I guess, secretly indicted for the gambling and stuff like that. I'm saying, what? And Paul, maybe I shouldn't say, but I'll say it anyway. Paul was there when we all could meet together, me and Joseph Lima, who was involved, and my brother. And I sat to him, I said, listen, how did I get involved in this? And I said to Paul, I says, maybe I should change these charges to 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter. Messing around with them, my brother and that. Paul said, do you want me to leave? I said, no, you stay here. That's good. You're helping the situation. I wound up, I had to plead guilty because if I didn't, and I would have took it to trial, I think we could have won it, but there was a chance of jeopardizing other people. I couldn't do that.
And there are more details about that in the book, Joe.
So, yeah, and it cost me another 7 years. Because if you're in jail, the parole board has strict rules. You get in trouble while you're in jail, you're going to pay the price.
You were ultimately paroled, I think, in December of 2016, just about 2 years ago.
No, I received parole in 2004, but I wasn't released until 2007. Once I was out, I got involved with a flea market thing, which I bought a pair of sneakers for my grandson. I don't want to go wait in trial for 3.5 years. There's a lot in between all that, but afterwards, and that's when I had to plead guilty to knock off sneakers and pocketbooks or whatever it was, and I got back out.
The end of that Terracani report raised kind of a question. The mob's diminished, but is it ever going to be put to rest completely when things like operating gambling facilities while in prison? The bottom line is, one of the points in your book is the mafia's diminished but not dead.
That's hard to say. I wouldn't know because I totally I segregated myself from that. I'm just, I made my mistakes, paying the price, and I'm not moving back. I'm moving forward. You make pains to say that this is not a book by a mob informant because you never informed on anyone. It took me 40 years to bring that to fruition because different people that were involved, I couldn't say nothing to them because I don't do that, because that would have got them in trouble, and it possibly cost my brother's life.
But now was the time.
Now is the time. And the person that allegedly was involved with me, or was, in this case, the murder case, I exposed it, and I put it to where it was supposed to be. It's in the book, so.
And it must have been, was it a difficult book together, or did all the facts come together pretty easily, Joe?
Well, it's difficult because the difference with writing nonfiction is, you want to make sure you get your facts straight. And there's a lot of, a lot of cases that I had to go through, reading the transcripts of the Bonded Vault trial and the Basmazian homicide case. There is some, we have the benefit of hindsight now, 40 years, 30 years, of being able to look back at the case and what happened. And I think it's troubling. It was troubling to me when I read the case and reviewed all the circumstances of the case that Harold was convicted, because, quite frankly, I think there is significant room for doubt there. And having the benefit now of knowing some of the things that went on with the FBI and with Whitey Bulger and that whole thing that took place up in Boston, it has impacts in Rhode Island because, Raymond Patriarca went to prison based on perjured testimony that the FBI was aware of, and Joe Barboza.
You know, there are so many other angles we would take with this, but with our limited time, I want to ask this of the two of you. What's the lesson you want people to take from this book about the mafia, Rhode Island, and whatever else?
Well, choices. You make the best and most positive choices that's going to be overall, in the long frame of things, that's going to help you keep on the straight and narrow and be a productive citizen, using them phrases.
And you're a productive citizen going forward?
Oh, absolutely. Now I am, yeah.
What are your future plans?
Well, to work, hopefully start a business. I have one, anyways, an event planner, but I just want to just take it the way it is. You know, I'm with my family, and it's nice to be able to lay down at night, not worrying about any local law enforcement or anything coming and breaking down your door. It's a nice feeling, you know, so that's why I know I'm being productive, because I'm not doing nothing. But one thing I want to say, I saw that news feed, and you brought up Mr. Minacchio. I think he's getting a bad rap. I'm not sticking up for organized crime or anybody. He's getting a bad rap because what happened with me and my brother and Joey about the wiretapping and the gambling with Mr. O'Donnell, he had nothing to do with that I know of. All I know was just myself, 2 phone calls that my brothers told me after the fact, and then but there's no way, like anything else, when the news media gets it, I got to tell you, you just blow it up. It sells papers. It puts you on TV. That's all great. That's your choices. You do them. You know, but the thing of it is, there should be somewhere in there where they shouldn't be able to confuse facts. I mean, look, whatever they do. But they're getting a bad rap because that's, to my knowledge, I didn't know anybody else was involved in anything other than my brother, me, and through the phone calls.
And in response to that, I will say, yes, having been in this business for a long, long time, sometimes we don't get the facts exactly right. We always try our best, but sometimes...
But you manufacture them well.
Well, I'll dispute that one, and we can have that conversation for a long time. Aside from what Jerry said, I'll ask you the same question, Joe. What do you want the public to get out of this book, the message?
Well, I think the one really important thing that I found when I wrote the book, and I think it's a telling story. I'll tell a real quick story. I tracked down... Jerry was charged with a crime when he was in Vietnam in the Marine Corps. And I tracked down the Judge Advocate General attorney who represented him, the Marine officer who represented him, who's now he's a retired presiding justice of the California Supreme Court. And when the appellate court. But when I talked with him, this guy had been an attorney for well over 50 years. Yeah. He remembered 3 cases that stuck out in his mind that he considered to be miscarriages of justice, and one of them happened to have been Jerry's case. So what I would like people to get from reading this book is understand that sometimes people make choices, and sometimes the choices are good and bad, and sometimes they are thrust into circumstances that are beyond their control, and we need to be aware of that. You know, we need to be aware of that. Jerry came back from Vietnam an angry young man, and the people the choices he made at that time set him down one road, you know.
The government I believed in, which I still do. I love my country. I'm a patriot. If I could go back and help and be where they are now, I'd go back. But the government really, really messed my life up. But, you know, that being said, to go back and my personal opinion is, crime don't pay. You're going to lose everything you own. It only takes one time. Get little, we call junk bids. You go in for a year, come out for a year. But when you look at the whole overall, eventually you're going to do a lot of time, especially, so a lot of guys did a life sentence on installment plans. And number one, you lose your family. You lose everything you had going for you. And then you have to think to yourself, when you're in that cell counting the bricks on the wall, how'd this happen? Was it worth it?
And we're ending this interview the same way we started it, dispelling the myth of the mob, and you did it much more eloquently than I did at the beginning. Thank you very much, Jerry Tillinghast.
Thank you, Frank.
Joe Broadmeadow, thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Paul DeMayo, thank you very much. Let's get a quick look now at the weather for today and the weekend with Zach.
There's really not much happening out there right now, but that is going to shift as we go into the evening hours. Plenty of rain on the way, so let's enjoy at least some of the sunshine while it's out and about. Temperatures for the moment really started to move quickly during the early morning, but now we will level things out in the upper 40s and low 50s as the clouds begin to increase. Going into the evening hours, once we pass about 7 or 8 o'clock, those showers are really going to take over, and they pour in between 10 and 2 in the morning on Saturday. Saturday. And don't think that even though we get rid of the rain on Saturday, we're just going to be bright and dry and calm. We have the winds to contest with tomorrow, specifically in the early morning, but they continue with that breeze in the afternoon. When all is said and done, an inch to maybe an inch and a half in some spots, and that is going to lead to some localized flooding. That's why a flood watch is in effect through this evening and tomorrow morning. Past that, we have a cool down, 45 degrees on Sunday with mostly sunny skies. We are dry once again Monday, and then it's Tuesday for another soaker.
All right, Zach, now on the side, I mentioned that we'd talk about one other topic. It has nothing to do with what we discussed now, but since I promised it, here it is. It's kind of a, I guess, compared to what we've been talking with so far, kind of a whimsical thing. It's a Massachusetts city with a youthful vibe and an eclectic mix of culture, and now about to be home to the nation's first legal recreational marijuana sellers east of Colorado. An existing medical marijuana dispensary in Northampton will be opening within days for anyone 21 or older looking for a range of cannabis-infused products. And a second store in the small town of Leicester, Massachusetts, may also open at or around the same time. How things have changed since the days when you could go to prison for marijuana-related offenses. Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us here on Coffee Break. Thanks to Zach, too, and thank you for joining us. We'll be back again Monday.
Thank you, Frank.